At 10:42 a.m. on March 30, 2003, a 911 call was placed by Maria Romero from a single-story home on Winthrop Avenue, Rockford. Her daughter, Jessica Lynn Romero, had not returned home the previous night. Her bed was undisturbed. Her phone was off. Her shoes, the black canvas ones she wore every day, were missing from the front step. Her mother had made coffee twice and checked the street 5 times. Jessica was 18 years old. By 14:05 hours that day, police entered the name Daniel Wade Kerrigan into the initial missing person report under the section known Associates, Romantic Involvement. Kerrigan was 20. He had been dating Jessica since she was 16. Their relationship, as later documented through witness statements, digital records, and court testimony, was not defined by affection. It was marked by surveillance, submission, and coercion. When Jessica asked for space, Daniel asked for passwords. When she laughed at a joke that wasn't his, he asked who the boy was. When she tried to end things in October 2002, he showed up at her school and followed her to class. Friends noticed the shift. One of them would later tell detectives, "It got to where she'd ask him if she could say hi to us. Like she had to get permission to exist." By early 2003, Jessica had become silent in public and anxious in private. At school, she was still present, but no longer there. A teacher wrote on her final report card, "Jessica appears distracted. Often looking at the door." What no one saw, until it was too late, was the pattern tightening around her. Control disguised as care. Isolation framed as protection. By March, she was rarely seen apart from him. On Friday, March 28, Jessica was captured on gas station security footage getting into Kerrigan's car at 3:19 p.m. She had her backpack slung low, one hand on the door. She wasn't smiling. That was the last time she was seen alive. Jessica entered Daniel Kerrigan's vehicle at 3:19 p.m. on Friday, March 28, 2003. It was the maroon 1993 Ford Taurus he had inherited from his father. The car had a cracked passenger side mirror, sun-faded rear seats, and a faint chemical odor inside, detergent and old sweat. They drove east, away from town. By 3:42 p.m., cellular tower data showed Jessica's phone pinged near an unincorporated rural district just past Route 173. It would remain in that zone for over 13 hours. The signal was last registered at 5:01 a.m. the next morning. An outbound call from Daniel's number to his own voicemail, left blank. Inside the small house on Wren Hollow Road, where Kerrigan lived alone, the air was dry, the drapes drawn, and the electricity powered by a single overloaded extension cord. Jessica had been there before, but never for long, and never overnight. That day, according to later forensic analysis, she was held there against her will from late afternoon until early morning. Witnesses in the neighborhood heard shouting between 6 o'clock and 7 p.m. One neighbor, Martha Derleth, described it as panicked yelling, one voice louder than the other. Then nothing for hours. According to Kerrigan's own partial confession and crime scene reconstruction, he drank continuously through the evening. The bottle of Old Crow whiskey he purchased the day before was recovered at the scene, nearly empty, his fingerprints along the neck. Blood alcohol estimates extrapolated backward suggested he was at or near 0.2% BAC at midnight. It was sometime between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., investigators believe, that Daniel forced Jessica to sit down at his desk and type a suicide note. The typewriter, an old Smith Corona electric with misaligned keys, was found still plugged in, the carriage locked mid-page. The letter was addressed to Mom, and its language was mechanical, detached. Linguistic analysis performed by state forensic examiners found multiple syntax anomalies not consistent with Jessica's writing style. Phrases like, "I've been feeling wrong for a long time," and "this is what I want now," had no precedent in her journals or schoolwork. The use of passive constructions and stilted grammar suggested coercion or dictation. Jessica's fingerprints were found on the paper, but none on the typewriter keys. At approximately 1:45 a.m., according to the coroner's timeline, Jessica was taken to the bathroom. She was made to sit on the edge of the bathtub. Using a serrated kitchen knife, Kerrigan forced her to extend both arms over the basin. She was threatened with the knife and with violence against her family if she screamed. She did not scream. Wounds to both wrists were consistent with assisted incisions, horizontal, not vertical, shallow hesitation cuts followed by 2 deep gouges along the radial arteries. She lost consciousness within 5 to 7 minutes. Death occurred from exsanguination between 2 o'clock and 2:15 a.m., March 29. Crime scene photographs documented blood spatter patterns indicating she was alive and upright for most of the bleeding period. Kerrigan did not call emergency services. He did not attempt resuscitation. Instead, evidence later showed, he remained in the home with Jessica's body for over 2 hours. During that time, forensic reports confirmed post-mortem sexual contact occurred. DNA evidence collected from the victim was consistent with Kerrigan and showed no signs of condom use. This act occurred between 3 o'clock and 4 a.m. It was the final injury he inflicted. By 6 a.m., he had washed her arms, dressed her in clean clothes, and placed her on the bathroom floor, arranged to suggest self-harm in solitude. Her phone had been powered off. Her backpack had been wiped clean of prints and zipped shut. Kerrigan then left the residence. He would not be seen again until 9:18 a.m., when he walked into a convenience store 3 miles from his house and purchased a pack of cigarettes, paying in cash, appearing calm. Jessica was still lying dead in his bathroom. At 12:17 p.m. on March 29, 2003, Maria Romero entered the Rockford Police Department to file an official missing person report. Jessica had not answered her phone, had not come home, and had not checked in with any known friends. Her bed was undisturbed, her toothbrush dry, and her planner left open to March 28 with no notes written for the following day. She had never failed to call home before. The responding officer, Sergeant L. Baines, documented the report under File MP 03-1147. Initial inquiries began at 13:05 hours, including phone pings, friend contacts, and a standard alert to regional law enforcement. The first digital lead came within 2 hours. Cell tower logs confirmed Jessica's last known location was near Wren Hollow Road, Daniel Kerrigan's address. At 4:52 p.m., detectives Gerald Ryan and Tanya Wexler were dispatched to that location for a welfare check. Kerrigan's vehicle was parked in the gravel driveway. No one answered the door. A call to the property owner, Kerrigan's maternal aunt, revealed the house was under his exclusive use, and that no one else had keys. By 6:22 p.m., Rockford PD obtained a limited warrant for forced entry based on probable cause tied to Jessica's last known phone signal and Kerrigan's known history of volatile behavior. Entry was made through the rear kitchen door. The smell hit first: cleaner, metal, and something unmistakably biological. The officers followed the scent to the bathroom. Jessica's body was found lying on her right side on the tiled floor. She was pale, lips discolored, eyes partially open. Her arms were extended, wrists clean but showing thin surgical scars. Blood had congealed beneath the bathtub and dried in 2 narrow trails toward the drain. A typed suicide note sat on the sink counter, carefully centered. She was fully clothed in a clean gray hoodie and black leggings. Her body temperature was consistent with death 12 to 14 hours prior. A forensic team arrived within the hour. Crime scene technicians documented a staged death scene. No defensive wounds. No ligature marks. But bruising beneath the fingernails, subtle and recent. Microscopic tissue samples taken from under her right thumbnail revealed epithelial cells from another individual. Later matched to Kerrigan. 2 cups were found on the kitchen table, both with partial lipstick smudges. Both tested positive for alcohol. Yet Jessica's toxicology report, finalized 4 days later, showed 0 traces of ethanol. She had not been drinking. A single serrated kitchen knife was discovered in the sink. Luminol tests revealed blood residue wiped but not sanitized. Handle prints belonged to Kerrigan alone. In the hallway trash bin, beneath layers of food wrappers, police found a crumpled tissue containing a semen sample. Preliminary swabs taken from Jessica's body returned a match to that same DNA. Time of exposure and body temperature placed the act post-mortem. At 8:14 p.m., a BOLO, be on the lookout, alert was issued for Daniel Wade Kerrigan, age 20, last seen driving a maroon Ford Taurus, plate No. 6HF 292. He was considered a suspect in the suspicious death of Jessica Lynn Romero. By morning, every patrol car in Winnebago and Boone counties had his photograph. At 9:47 a.m. on March 30, 2003, roughly 27 hours after Jessica Romero was last seen, Kerrigan was captured by state police during a routine stop near Freeport, Illinois, 27 miles west of Rockford. He was parked alone behind a shuttered diner off Route 20, the engine idling, the vehicle described as still warm, still in drive. A trooper responding to the BOLO spotted the maroon Taurus partially hidden beside a dumpster, its driver slouched low behind the steering wheel. Kerrigan was taken into custody without resistance. He did not ask why. He did not speak at all until his rights had been read a second time, back at the Rockford PD booking station. The first thing he said was, "She did it herself." Detective Tanya Wexler began the first interview at 12:15 p.m. Her notes described Kerrigan as composed, quiet, emotionless. He claimed that Jessica had been in pain for months, that she had talked about suicide before. He said he let her do what she wanted and didn't try to stop her because it was her decision. Then he told a version of events that conflicted with almost every piece of evidence at the scene. He claimed they had been drinking together. Toxicology later refuted this. Jessica had no alcohol in her system. He claimed she had cut her wrists in the bathtub while he was asleep. But blood evidence indicated she bled while upright, not while submerged. He claimed he tried to help, but no fingerprints were found on the sink, faucet, towels, or phone. And finally, he claimed she had written the note willingly. Yet the language matched his phrasing, not hers. And under pressure, he couldn't recall what the note said word for word. When confronted with the presence of semen and post-mortem trauma, Kerrigan became defensive. He said, "I loved her." Then said nothing for 23 minutes. A second session began later that evening. This time, Detective Gerald Rhine led. A photo of Jessica's body on the bathroom floor was placed on the table in front of Kerrigan. He pushed it aside. Rhine then placed the typed suicide note beside it. "You wrote this," Rhine said. "Or you made her write it?" Kerrigan stared at the wall for several seconds before responding. "She wouldn't listen. She always pushed back. She didn't know how much I did for her." When asked if he held the knife, he replied, "She put her hands there." When asked if he helped, he said, "She wouldn't have done it if I didn't tell her to." It was the closest he came to an admission. Kerrigan was formally charged on April 2, 2003, with first-degree murder, aggravated criminal sexual abuse of a corpse, coercion resulting in death, obstruction of justice. Bail was denied. While the public was still processing the arrest, the Romero family held a private funeral for Jessica on April 4. Her mother refused media interviews. The only public comment came from her older brother, Anthony. He didn't love her. He owned her. And when she tried to leave, he destroyed her. By the time of his indictment, Daniel Kerrigan had already become a symbol of hidden violence, of psychological entrapment, of what control can look like when it pretends to be care. He showed no remorse. Not during arrest. Not during booking. And not during trial. The people of the state of Illinois versus Daniel Wade Kerrigan opened on November 17, 2003, in the 17th Judicial Circuit Court, Rockford. Presiding was Judge Ellen Martz, known for her meticulous courtroom control and prior oversight of 2 high-profile homicide cases in the county. Jury selection lasted 3 days. The trial itself, 13. Kerrigan faced 4 charges. First-degree murder. Aggravated criminal sexual abuse of a corpse. Coercion resulting in death. Obstruction of justice. He pled not guilty on all counts. The prosecution, led by Assistant State's Attorney Leonard Farrow, presented a case built on meticulous forensic evidence, witness statements, and behavioral pattern testimony. Farrow began with a clear premise: Jessica Romero did not choose to die. She was maneuvered, manipulated, and murdered. Opening exhibits included the typed suicide note, determined via forensic linguistics to contain phrases regularly used by Kerrigan in past messages. Photos of the bathroom scene, highlighting signs of staging. Toxicology reports showing 0 ethanol in Jessica's system despite 2 used drinking glasses present. DNA reports confirming post-mortem sexual contact. A reconstructed timeline from phone records, surveillance footage, and cell tower data. Key testimony came from Maria Romero, Jessica's mother, who described a slow erasure of her daughter's independence over 2 years. She used to laugh out loud, Maria said. In the last 6 months, I didn't hear it once. Jessica's classmates testified about controlling behavior, confiscated phones, monitored texts, forbidden friendships. One friend recalled Jessica crying during lunch, whispering, "He says I'm lucky he puts up with me." Crucially, forensic pathologist Dr. Ellen Breck testified that Jessica's wrist wounds were not consistent with self-infliction. The angle, the depth, and the pattern suggest another hand guided the blade. She concluded death was caused by forced exsanguination. The defense, led by public defender Charles Neary, attempted to present the relationship as mutually toxic. He argued Jessica had emotional instability, though no medical diagnosis or psychiatric history supported this. He emphasized Kerrigan's lack of prior felonies and argued that post-mortem contact was inexplicable but not proof of homicide. Neary's cross-examinations were narrow. He challenged the objectivity of friends. He tried to discredit linguistic analysis. He claimed Kerrigan's "let her do it" statements were confused, not confessional. But the physical evidence and Kerrigan's own words held. On the 9th day of trial, the prosecution played a 5-minute excerpt from Kerrigan's second police interview. "She wouldn't have done it if I didn't tell her to." The courtroom was silent except for the whir of the tape. Closing arguments concluded on November 28. The jury deliberated 6 hours. Verdict: guilty on all 4 counts. Sentence: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Judge Mart stated, "Mr. Kerrigan, what you did was not love. It was domination, coercion, and finally annihilation. You took a young woman's voice, then her body, then her life. This court ensures you will never have the opportunity to do it again." Daniel Wade Kerrigan was transferred to Stateville Correctional Center on December 2, 2003. He has not filed an appeal. Jessica Lynn Romero was buried on April 4, 2003, at Greenwood Memorial Park under a modest headstone etched with a single line beneath her name: "She was learning how to live." Attendance at her funeral reached over 200, most from the local community, some who hadn't spoken to her in years, others who never had. Word had spread quickly that this wasn't a tragedy in the abstract. This was a girl whose suffering had been visible in pieces. In silence. In excuses. After the conviction, public interest in the case remained unusually high for a single-victim domestic homicide. Local news outlets published follow-up investigations. A 3-part series by the Rockford Register-Star, titled "When Love is a Trap," profiled patterns of coercive control in adolescent relationships. Jessica's case was cited as a clean example of psychological entrapment culminating in murder. The Romero family launched the Jessica Lynn Foundation in October 2004, dedicated to education on intimate partner violence among teens. The organization distributed resource kits to every public high school in Winnebago County and hosted annual speaking events with survivors and forensic specialists. Jessica's mother, Maria Romero, rarely spoke to media after trial, but in a recorded message played during the Foundation's first awareness campaign, she said, My daughter was not weak. She was made small. She was told her voice didn't matter. And in the end, when she asked for help, no one heard her. So now, we speak for her. In 2005, Illinois state legislators passed Bill HB 3814, requiring all public schools to implement relationship abuse education into health curricula for grades 9 to 12. Though not directly named, the bill's sponsor, Representative Elaine Foy, acknowledged the Romero case as a catalyst during committee hearings. Academic studies cited the case in analyses of legal system handling of coercive control. Dr. Harold Levin of the Midwestern Forensic Institute published a 2006 paper titled, Compliance Under Threat, The Romero Case and the Limits of Consent, calling the conviction a landmark moment in recognizing psychological abuse as a lethal precursor. Internally, Rockford PD revised its intake protocols for missing persons involving romantic partners. A new field, known behavioral control, was added to early report templates. Sergeant L. Baines, who took the original missing person report, later admitted, looking back, it wasn't that we missed signs. It's that we weren't trained to recognize them. Daniel Kerrigan has remained incarcerated at Stateville Correctional Center since December 2003. He has not issued public statements, filed for appeal, or granted interviews. Records indicate 3 disciplinary write-ups, 2 for insubordination, 1 for verbal aggression, but no physical altercations or self-harm. In a psychological assessment performed in 2009 as part of a system-wide review of long-term inmates under 30, Kerrigan was described as highly controlling, low empathy, no insight. He showed no remorse. When asked about Jessica, he replied, she wouldn't listen. It's not my fault. No further contact has been made between Kerrigan and the Romero family. Jessica's younger sister, Emily, now works as a counselor at a women's shelter in Chicago. Jessica's case remains cited in legal training modules for domestic violence investigations across the Midwest. Final classification. Offense type, domestic homicide by coercive control and assisted suicide staging. Manner of death, homicide, exsanguination by assisted incisions. Motive, psychological dominance, retaliatory control, sexual gratification post-mortem. Conviction, first-degree murder, life without parole, plus concurrent sentences for aggravated abuse and obstruction. Case status, closed, full conviction secured, no appeals pending. Agency findings. The Rockford Police Department, in conjunction with Winnebago County Coroner's Office and the State's Attorney's Office, formally concluded that the death of Jessica Lynn Romero was the culmination of an escalating pattern of psychological abuse and behavioral control by Daniel Wade Kerrigan. While no prior physical assault had been documented, the cumulative evidence of coercion, monitoring, and emotional suppression formed the backdrop against which the homicide occurred. Notably, the method of death, forced wrist incisions, was selected to imitate suicide, capitalizing on the cultural invisibility of psychological entrapment. The effort to stage the death as voluntary delayed initial response times and complicated early investigative efforts. The timeline from abduction to discovery was 30 hours. Within that window, the victim was isolated, coerced into composing a false suicide letter, restrained, and ultimately killed under threat. After death, she was subjected to sexual abuse. The scene was staged to shift blame. Without prompt forensic intervention and scene preservation, the case might have remained unresolved or misclassified. Lessons and policy shifts. 1. Coercive control recognition. Jessica Romero's case underscored the necessity of incorporating psychological abuse and non-physical control into early risk assessments for young women in dating relationships. Behavioral signs, withdrawal, deference, communication isolation, must be evaluated as potential pre-violence indicators, particularly in adolescence. 2. Interagency coordination. Cell tower data, digital correspondence, and psychological profiling played a critical role in reconstructing the victim's final hours. The seamless cooperation between digital forensics, homicide investigators, and behavioral analysts allowed for a comprehensive timeline that supported conviction without a full confession. 3. Victim behavior misinterpretation. Jessica was never reported as physically injured prior to her death. But school officials, peers, and even family members had noted shifts in her autonomy, demeanor, and contact patterns. The case highlights the inadequacy of visible bruises as the sole threshold for intervention. 4. Legislative reform influence. While not cited directly, the case was widely referenced in domestic violence prevention reform discussions across Illinois between 2003 and 2005. The state's mandatory relationship education bill passed within 2 years of the conviction. In retrospect, Jessica Romero's name remains in internal LE database indexes associated with cases of non-physical intimate partner coercion leading to homicide. Her death is now a reference point in officer training scenarios and college abuse prevention programming. She did not leave a long social trail, nor a dramatic paper record. She left a pattern. And in that pattern, she left warnings. The final line of the coroner's report, case number 03-WC-147, reads: "No evidence of self-inflicted intent. Victim likely believed compliance could prevent escalation. It could not.